The evening had started like any other at the Golden Leaf, an upscale restaurant nestled between glass skyscrapers in downtown Chicago. The warm glow from crystal chandeliers bathed the white tablecloths in soft light, as wealthy patrons dined on overpriced steaks and sipped vintage wines. In the kitchen, Lily Chen wiped sweat from her brow, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. At 23, she'd been working double shifts for almost 2 years now, trying to keep up with both her music theory classes and the ever-increasing rent on her tiny apartment. Tonight was particularly busy. A private event had booked half the restaurant, leaving the remaining staff scrambling to cover the regular dinner service. "Order up for table 12. The chef called out, sliding 2 plates of seared scallops across the counter. Lily balanced the dishes carefully on her arm, pushing through the swinging door into the dining area. She'd gotten good at this dance, weaving between tables, smiling at customers who rarely looked up from their phones, and keeping her exhaustion hidden beneath professional courtesy. "Just get through tonight," she whispered to herself. "Just 6 more hours." The restaurant door swung open, letting in a blast of cold October wind. All heads turned as a group of 5 people walked in, 4 men in expensive suits and 1 woman with striking silver hair. Lily recognized the man at the center instantly. Everyone in Chicago knew Richard Winters, the tech billionaire whose face regularly graced magazine covers and news segments. His latest app had revolutionized something or other that Lily couldn't afford anyway. The maitre d' nearly tripped over himself, rushing to greet them. "Mr. Winters, what an unexpected honor. I'm afraid we don't have a reservation, but—" "Make it happen," Winters said. Not unkindly, but with the easy confidence of someone who had never heard the word no. He handed the flustered man what appeared to be several $100 bills. "Somewhere quiet, please. We have business to discuss." The staff scrambled. A table was cleared in the corner. Settings were arranged, and within minutes, Winters and his entourage were seated at the restaurant's best spot, a corner table partially secluded by an ornate wooden screen carved with lotus flowers. Lily. Her manager, Theo, appeared at her side, looking simultaneously thrilled and terrified. "You're taking Mr. Winters' table." "What?" "No," Lily protested. "Diane has that section tonight. I'm already handling tables 12 through 17, and the party in the back keeps ordering. Diane called in sick, and you're our best server." Theo cut her off. "The man is worth billions. He could buy this entire building without blinking." "Please, Lily." With a resigned sigh, Lily nodded and made her way to the table. She could feel eyes following her, both envious and pitying glances from coworkers who knew how demanding VIP tables could be. "Good evening," she said, approaching with a professional smile. "Welcome to the Golden Leaf. I'm Lily, and I'll be your server tonight. Can I start you with something from the bar?" Winters looked up from his phone, and Lily was surprised by his eyes, a clear, piercing blue that seemed to look right through her. He wasn't what she expected. In person, he appeared younger than in his photos, maybe early 40s, with touches of gray at his temples and smile lines that suggested he laughed more than his serious public persona let on. "McAllen, 25. Neat," he said. His companions ordered similarly expensive drinks, and Lily jotted everything down, mentally calculating the bill that would likely exceed her weekly rent. As she turned to leave, one of the men in suits asked, "Isn't that a Steinway in the corner? Does anyone ever play it?" Lily glanced at the grand piano that sat largely forgotten in the opposite corner of the restaurant. It had been there since the restaurant opened, supposedly once played by a famous jazz musician who had been a friend of the original owner. These days it was mainly decorative, occasionally dusted but rarely touched. "Occasionally for special events," she answered. "I believe the owner keeps it tuned." She hurried away to put in their drink orders, but as she passed table 14, disaster struck. A child darted out from his chair directly into her path. Lily swerved to avoid him, lost her balance, and stumbled forward, right toward Winters' table. She caught herself on the edge, but not before a glass of ice water tipped over, sending its contents directly onto Winters' lap. The restaurant fell silent. Lily froze in horror as water dripped from the edge of the table onto what she was certain was a suit that cost more than her car. "I am so sorry," she gasped, grabbing napkins and frantically trying to help without actually touching him. "Please let me—" "It's fine," Winters said, though his companions looked less forgiving. He stood dabbing at his pants with a napkin. "Accidents happen. Lily felt lightheaded with relief that he wasn't yelling. She'd seen wealthy patrons demand firings for far less. "Thank you for understanding. I'll get you fresh water right away, and of course your meal will be—" "Your hands," Winters interrupted, his gaze fixed on her fingers as she clutched the napkins. Lily looked down, confused. "I'm sorry?" "Your hands," he repeated. "Those are pianist's hands." The observation caught her completely off guard. Her hands had always been her pride, long fingers, strong and flexible from years of practice. "But how could he possibly know I—" "Used to play," she admitted, suddenly self-conscious. Something shifted in Winter's expression. Curiosity, perhaps, or recognition. He glanced at the forgotten piano in the corner, then back at her. "Would you play something for us?" he asked. The question hung in the air like a suspended note. Lily felt her throat tighten. I'm working." "I couldn't possibly." "I insist," Winter said. There was no malice in his voice, but there was unmistakable authority. "Consider it making up for my wet pants." By now, other diners had caught wind of the conversation. Heads turned in their direction, and Lily could feel Theo hovering nearby, clearly unsure whether to intervene. "Sir, I haven't played in years," she said quietly. "Not really. Not properly." Winters studied her face, and for a moment Lily thought he might let it go. Instead, he reached for his wallet and pulled out what appeared to be a $1,000 bill. "One song," he said, placing the money on the table. "And if you truly can't play anymore, then just hit a few keys and take the money anyway. But something tells me there's more to you than meets the eye, Lily." The way he said her name made her feel seen in a way she hadn't in years, not since before the accident, before she'd packed away her music and dreams along with her parents' belongings. Theo appeared at her side. "Is everything all right here?" Winters smiled at him. "Your server has kindly agreed to play us something on that beautiful Steinway you've been hiding in the corner. I hope that's not a problem?" The look on Theo's face made it clear that Richard Winters could have requested a circus performance in the middle of the dining room, and the answer would still be yes. "Of course not. Lily, why didn't you tell me you played piano?" "Because it hurt too much to talk about. Because music had been her life until it became intertwined with her greatest loss. Because every time she heard Chopin or Debussy, she remembered her mother's hands guiding hers over the keys, her father's proud applause from the doorway. But she couldn't say any of that. Instead, she nodded and slowly made her way to the piano as conversations hushed around her. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath as she carefully lifted the cover and ran her fingers lightly over the keys. The piano was indeed well maintained, its ivory cool beneath her touch. Lily sat down, her heart hammering so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. She hadn't performed for an audience since the recital before the funeral. 3 years of silence. She looked back at Winters, who watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Expectation mixed with something that might have been understanding. Behind him, she could see her co-workers staring in disbelief, customers pausing with forks midway to mouths, and Theo looking like he might faint from the tension. Lily closed her eyes and tried to steady her breathing. What could she possibly play after all this time? Her fingers found their position automatically, muscle memory taking over as she gently pressed down on the keys. The first notes of Debussy's Clair de Lune floated through the restaurant, hesitant at first, like a conversation with an old friend you haven't seen in years. But as the familiar melody wrapped around her, something long dormant awakened in Lily's chest. Her fingers remembered what her mind had tried to forget, the joy of creating something beautiful, of speaking a language that needed no words. As the piece progressed, her confidence grew. The restaurant and its patrons faded away until it was just Lily and the music, reconnecting after a painful separation. She swayed slightly as the crescendo built, her body remembering how to dance with the rhythm, how to breathe with the phrases. When the final notes faded into silence, Lily kept her eyes closed for a moment longer, afraid to break the spell. When she finally looked up, she was met with a sight that made her breath catch. The entire restaurant was still, watching her with expressions ranging from surprise to awe. And Richard Winters was standing, a strange light in his eyes that looked almost like recognition. The applause started slowly, a single pair of hands, then another, until the entire restaurant erupted in appreciation. Lily blinked, coming back to herself, suddenly aware of all the eyes fixed upon her. Heat rushed to her cheeks as she stood awkwardly and gave a small bow, the way she'd been taught as a child. Richard Winters was still standing, his expression unreadable. As the applause died down, he walked toward her with deliberate steps. Conversations resumed around the restaurant, but at a lower volume with glances still thrown in their direction. "That wasn't just used to play," he said when he reached the piano. "That was—" He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "That was someone who speaks the language." Lily's hands trembled slightly as she closed the piano lid. "Thank you for the compliment, Mr. Winters, but I really should get back to work. Your drinks will be ready soon. Sit down," he said, gesturing to the piano bench. When she hesitated, he added more gently, "Please, just for a moment." Reluctantly, Lily sat back down, and to her surprise, Winters settled beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. "Conservatory training?" he asked. Lily nodded. "Eastman. For 12 years since I was 7. She didn't mention that she'd left during her second year after everything fell apart. "I thought so. You don't develop that technique waiting tables." He ran a finger lightly over the keys without pressing them. "I have a personal interest in music. My mother was a concert pianist before arthritis took that away from her. I grew up watching her play." There was something in his voice, a softness that hadn't been there before, a vulnerability that seemed at odds with his public persona. "She played Debussy too," he added. Lily found herself wondering what this man really wanted. Wealthy people often had strange whims, momentary interests in the lives of those who served them, before moving on to their next distraction. "Mr. Winters, I appreciate your interest, but why did you stop?" he interrupted. "Someone with your talent doesn't just walk away unless something happened." The question hit like a physical blow. Lily stood abruptly, nearly knocking over the bench. "I need to check on your drinks." She hurried away, weaving through tables, avoiding eye contact with curious diners. In the relative safety of the kitchen, she leaned against the wall, eyes closed, trying to steady her breathing. What was that? Theo appeared beside her, eyes wide with excitement. "Lily, you never told me you could play like that." "Where did you learn to—" "Please, Theo," she cut him off. "I can't talk about it right now. I need to serve the drinks to table 8. Her manager looked like he wanted to press further, but instead nodded toward the bar. "They're ready, and Lily? Whatever's going on with Mr. Winters, handle it carefully. People like him can change lives, for better or worse." The warning was unnecessary. Lily had no intention of sharing her story with a stranger, no matter how rich or powerful. She collected the tray of expensive drinks and headed back out. At the table, Winters had rejoined his companions, who were now engaged in animated conversation. Lily set down their drinks with professional efficiency, keeping her eyes lowered. "Would you like to hear about tonight's specials?" she asked, voice deliberately neutral. "Actually," said the woman with silver hair, "we'd love to hear about where you studied." "Richard says you're Eastman trained?" Lily forced a polite smile. "Yes, briefly. The chef has prepared an excellent Dover sole this evening with a brown butter sauce that—" "I've just had a thought," Winters interrupted, turning to the others at the table. "What about Lily for the Frost charity event? The pianist we booked canceled yesterday, and we've been scrambling." The others at the table looked at her with new interest, sizing her up. The silver-haired woman nodded thoughtfully. "She certainly has the skill," she agreed. "But would she be appropriate?" The way she said it made it clear she was referring to more than musical ability. Her eyes traveled over Lily's simple black uniform, the serviceable shoes, the hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "Appearances can be managed," one of the men responded. "If she can play like that with no preparation after years away from the instrument, imagine what she could do with some practice." Lily felt her patience slipping. "Excuse me, I'm standing right here, and I'm not interested in whatever this is. Now, would you like to order food, or should I give you more time with the menu?" Instead of being offended, Winters smiled. 2 weeks from now, I'm hosting a charity gala for the Frost Foundation. It raises money for music education in underfunded schools. Our pianist had a scheduling conflict, and we need someone to perform 3 pieces during the evening. It pays $10,000 for one night. The amount hit Lily like a physical blow. $10,000 was more than 3 months of her salary, enough to cover next semester's tuition and put a dent in her student loans. "I told you I don't perform anymore," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Take my card." Winters pulled a sleek business card from his jacket and held it out. "Think about it. Call me tomorrow with your answer." Lily hesitated, then took the card, slipping it into her pocket. "I'll get you some bread for the table." For the rest of their meal, Lily maintained a professional distance and Winters respectfully stopped pushing about the piano. They ordered expensive entrees, 2 bottles of wine, and left a generous tip. As they prepared to leave, Winters paused beside Lily. "The card has my personal number," he said quietly. "Not my assistant's, I hope you'll call." After they left, the restaurant seemed strangely empty despite the other patrons. Lily finished her shift in a daze, her fingers occasionally flexing as if finding invisible keys to press. The muscle memory had returned so easily, as though her body had just been waiting for permission to remember. As she hung up her apron at the end of the night, Theo approached her again. "So, that was something," he said, leaning against the wall. "I've worked here 5 years and I've never seen anything like that happen." Lily shrugged, suddenly exhausted. "Just a weird night. He left something for you." Theo held out an envelope. "Asked me to give it to you after your shift ended." She took it warily. Inside was a check for $5,000 with "for the impromptu concert" written in the memo line. Paperclipped to it was a note on heavy stationery. "A down payment. The other half when you play at the gala. R.W. That's a lot of money," Theo whispered, having clearly peeked before handing it over. It was. Enough to make a real difference in her precarious finances. "It's enough to be suspicious. I can't accept this," she said, though she didn't immediately put it back in the envelope. "Why not? You earned it." "I've never heard anyone play like that," Lily sighed, tucking the envelope into her bag. She'd decide what to do with it later. The night air was crisp as she left the restaurant, pulling her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders. Her apartment was a 30-minute bus ride away, in a neighborhood that had seen better days. Usually she spent the commute scrolling through social media or reviewing notes for class, but tonight her mind was elsewhere. She hadn't told Winters the whole truth. She hadn't just studied at Eastman. She had been one of their most promising students, earmarked for international competitions, with whispers of a future at Juilliard or Curtis for graduate studies. Piano hadn't been her hobby. It had been her identity, until the accident. The memory still came in flashes. The late-night phone call, the sterile hospital corridors, the unbearable weight of grief. Her parents had been driving home from her recital when their car was hit by a drunk driver. They died instantly, she was told, as if that was supposed to be a comfort. The last thing they had ever heard was her playing Debussy, the very piece she had played tonight. After their deaths, she couldn't bear to touch the piano. Each note felt like reopening a wound. She'd withdrawn from school, sold most of her belongings, including her mother's upright piano, and moved to Chicago to start over. Music theory was as close as she allowed herself to get to her former passion, an academic understanding without the emotional connection. Yet tonight, playing those familiar notes had felt like coming home after a long absence. Beneath the grief there had been something else, a reminder of why she had loved it in the first place. The bus lurched to a stop near her apartment building, jarring her from her thoughts. As she climbed the 4 flights of stairs to her unit, the elevator had been broken for months. She pulled out Winter's card and stared at it. Inside her small apartment, she dropped her bag on the kitchen counter and walked to the closet in her bedroom. Pushing aside hanging clothes, she reached for a storage box on the high shelf. It took some effort, but she managed to pull it down. The box contained the few mementos she'd kept from her old life. Photographs of her parents, competition medals, and wrapped carefully in soft cloth. Her mother's favorite sheet music, dog-eared from years of use. Lily gently unwrapped the music, her fingers tracing the notes on the page. She hadn't allowed herself this in years, this connection to who she used to be. The business card sat on her nightstand, a decision waiting to be made. Playing again professionally meant reopening doors she'd deliberately closed, facing memories she'd carefully packed away. But for the first time in 3 years, she found herself wondering if those doors had ever truly been closed, or if they'd just been waiting for the right moment to open again. Winter's words echoed in her mind. That was someone who speaks the language. Maybe it was time to start speaking again. Morning light filtered through Lily's thin curtains as she stared at her phone, Richard Winter's business card in her other hand. She had barely slept, her mind replaying the previous night's events on an endless loop. The feel of the piano keys beneath her fingers had awakened something she'd fought to keep dormant for 3 years. She had already missed her morning class, unable to drag herself from the tangle of memories and possibilities. The check for $5,000 sat on her nightstand, both tempting and terrifying. With a deep breath, she dialed the number on the card. It rang only once before he answered. Richard Winters. This is Lily Chen, she said, her voice steadier than she expected. From the restaurant last night. Lily. She could hear the smile in his voice. I was hoping you'd call. I'm calling to return your check. I appreciate the gesture, but I can't accept it. There was a pause on the other end. May I ask why? Lily ran her fingers over the worn edge of her mother's sheet music, which she'd left on the coffee table. It's complicated. I'm not the person you think I am, not anymore. I haven't seriously played in years. And yet you played Debussy flawlessly with no preparation, Winters countered. Talent like yours doesn't disappear, Lily, it waits. She closed her eyes. Why me? There must be dozens of professional pianists who would jump at your offer. True, but none of them would have the story you have. You don't know my story, she said sharply. I know enough. His voice softened. After you played last night, I made some calls. You were a rising star at Eastman before you dropped out. Your professors still talk about you, the promising student who vanished. One of them described you as the most naturally gifted pianist of her generation. A cold feeling washed over Lily. You looked into my background. That's what people with resources do when they discover something extraordinary, he interrupted. I didn't dig into personal details, just your musical background. I wanted to confirm what my ears told me. Lily fought the urge to hang up. What right did this stranger have to research her past? To force his way into the life she'd carefully reconstructed? The gala isn't just about having someone play pretty music while rich people eat expensive food, Winters continued when she didn't respond. It's about inspiration. These funds provide instruments and instruction to kids who would never have access otherwise. Your story, from prodigy to waitress and back to the stage, that resonates. That's real. I haven't agreed to anything, she reminded him. Not yet, but I'm offering you a chance to help yourself and others at the same time. $10,000 for one night of doing what you were born to do. And if you're worried about preparation, I can arrange for you to practice on a proper grand piano every day until the event. It was a generous offer. Too generous. Why do you care so much? You don't know me. There was a long pause before Winters answered, his voice quieter now. My mother gave up her career when she married my father. By the time I was old enough to understand what she had sacrificed, arthritis had already stolen her ability to play professionally. She taught piano from our home, but I always saw the sadness in her eyes when she watched her students perform pieces her hands could no longer manage. Another pause.
She always told me that music isn't just something you do. It's something you are.
When I heard you play last night, I saw someone denying who they are. I've spent my life building things, Lily, but I've never been able to give my mother back what she lost. Maybe I can prevent someone else from losing it. Lily hadn't expected such honesty. The sincerity in his voice made it harder to dismiss him as just another rich man with a vanity project. I have classes, she said, her resistance weakening, and work. We can work around your schedule for practice. As for the restaurant, I'm friendly with the owner. I'm sure an arrangement could be made for 2 weeks. Of course he knew the owner. Men like Winters had connections everywhere. I'm not promising anything, Lily said finally, but I'll meet you to discuss details. If and only if I feel comfortable with the arrangement, I might consider it. That's all I'm asking for. There's a music store on Michigan Avenue, Hartman's. They have private practice rooms in the back. Meet me there at 2 this afternoon? Lily agreed and hung up, feeling like she'd just stepped off a cliff with no idea how far the drop might be. At 10 minutes to 2, she stood outside Hartman's, a venerable institution in Chicago's music scene. She'd visited a few times since moving to the city, but always stayed in the sheet music section, avoiding the grand pianos displayed like museum pieces in the main showroom. She spotted Winters as soon as she entered. It was hard to miss the small crowd of employees gathered around him. He broke away when he saw her, greeting her with a smile that seemed genuinely pleased. Thank you for coming, he said, leading her past the showroom toward the back of the store. I've arranged for us to use practice room 3. It has their best Steinway. The practice room was larger than Lily expected, with sound-dampening panels on the walls and a gleaming black Steinway & Sons grand piano in the center. Winters closed the door behind them, muting the store's ambient noise. It's just us, he said, noting her nervous glance. No audience, no pressure. Lily approached the piano cautiously as if it might snap at her. This was a far cry from the restaurant's neglected instrument. This was a performance-grade piano, the kind she had once dreamed of owning. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to the bench. Winters nodded, moving to stand by the window, giving her space. Lily sat down, adjusting the bench's height. She placed her hands on the keys without pressing them, feeling the cool ivory beneath her fingers. Then, almost without conscious decision, she began to play. Not Debussy this time, but Bach, the prelude in C major from the Well-Tempered Clavier. It had been her warm-up piece for years, the musical equivalent of coming home. The notes flowed from her fingers with surprising ease, muscle memory taking over where conscious thought faltered. When she finished, she looked up to find Winters watching her with an expression that reminded her of her father, pride mixed with wonder, as if witnessing something miraculous. "You haven't lost anything," he said quietly. "That was just Bach. It's practically in my DNA at this point." She flexed her fingers, which felt more alive than they had in years. The gala would require more challenging pieces. "What would you want to play if you took this on?" The question caught her off guard. She'd expected him to dictate the program. "You'd let me choose?" "Within reason. It is a charity event, not a doctoral recital. The audience needs to be engaged, not lectured." Lily considered this. "Something that tells a story, then." Chopin's Ballad No. 1 in G minor for the emotional core. Perhaps Liszt's Liebesträume to open. It's romantic but accessible. And to finish, she paused, thinking. Something with power. Rachmaninoff's Prelude in G minor would make a statement. Winters raised an eyebrow, impressed. "That's an ambitious program." "You wanted a pianist, not a music box," she replied, surprising herself with her boldness. "Those pieces showcase range, emotion, and technical skill. They tell a story without words. Your story?" Lily's hands returned to the keys, playing a soft, melancholy passage from the Chopin. "Maybe. Parts of it. The parts you're ready to share." She nodded, continuing to play. The music filled the space between them, saying things she wasn't ready to put into words. After several minutes, she stopped. "I'm out of practice. My fingers don't have the stamina they once did. That can be rebuilt. The question is, do you want to rebuild it?" It was the heart of the matter, the question she'd been avoiding since last night. Did she want music back in her life? Could she separate it from the pain of her loss? "I'm afraid," she admitted, voicing the truth for the first time. "Not of playing poorly, but of feeling too much. Music was never just notes on a page for me. It was everything. Letting it back in means opening doors I've kept locked for good reasons." Winters leaned against the wall, considering her words. "After my divorce, I couldn't listen to Ella Fitzgerald for 2 years. My ex-wife loved her music. We danced to it at our wedding. Now I can enjoy it again, but differently. The pain doesn't disappear, but it changes form." "Is that supposed to be comforting?" Lily asked, a hint of sharpness in her voice. "No, just true." He straightened up. "I'm not asking you to heal on my timeline. I'm offering an opportunity. Take it or leave it. But don't leave it because you're afraid of who you might rediscover in the process." Lily ran her fingers over the keys without pressing them, feeling their potential energy. Each key contained music waiting to be released, just as she had melodies locked inside her. 2 weeks is not much time," she said finally. "So that's a yes?" Winters asked, trying and failing to hide his eagerness. "It's a provisional yes." She turned to face him fully. "I'll practice for 1 week. If at that point I don't feel ready or change my mind for any reason, I walk away. No questions asked. You keep your money, I keep my peace of mind. And if after a week you decide to continue, then I play your gala. But I want everything in writing, expectations, payment, all of it." Winters smiled, extending his hand. "My lawyers will draw up an agreement by tomorrow." "You drive a hard bargain, Lily Chen." "I've learned to be careful," she replied, shaking his hand briefly. "Now if we're done here, I have a lot of practice ahead of me." "We're done. The room is yours for as long as you want it today. I've arranged for you to have access every day from noon to 6. He headed for the door, then paused. "One more thing. The invitation to the gala includes a clothing budget. My assistant will be in touch about that." After he left, Lily remained at the piano, playing fragments of pieces she'd once known by heart. Some came back easily. Others remained frustratingly out of reach. But beneath the frustration was something she hadn't felt in years, the pure joy of creation, of bringing something beautiful into existence through her own hands. When she finally left the practice room 4 hours later, her fingers were sore and her back ached, but her mind felt clearer than it had in years. She had made a decision, terrifying as it was, to open the door just a crack and let music back into her life. Whether it would heal or hurt remained to be seen. But for the first time since the accident, Lily was willing to find out. The week passed in a blur of notes and aching fingers. Lily's days fell into a new rhythm. Morning classes, afternoon practice sessions at Hartman's, then back to her apartment to study until she fell asleep with sheet music scattered across her bed. The restaurant had given her a 2-week leave of absence after a call from Winters, with a guarantee that her job would be waiting regardless of what happened at the gala. On the 6th day of practice, Lily arrived at Hartman's to find a small box waiting for her in the practice room. Inside were fingerless compression gloves designed for pianists, along with a note in unfamiliar handwriting. For the inevitable soreness. My mother swore by these. Fars value, the gesture touched her more than she wanted to admit. She slipped them on, surprised at how they eased the strain without limiting her movement. That day she practiced for nearly 5 hours straight, working through the challenging middle section of the Rachmaninoff that had been giving her trouble. When she finally emerged from the practice room, the store manager handed her a message. Winters wanted to hear her progress tomorrow, the final day of their trial period. That night, Lily barely slept. By morning, dark circles shadowed her eyes, but her resolve had solidified. She knew what she needed to do. She arrived at Hartman's early, warming up with scales and arpeggios, feeling the music flow through her body like electricity. When Winters appeared at the door precisely at noon, she was ready. "Good afternoon," he said, taking a seat in the corner of the room. "How has the week been?" "Harder than I remembered. Better than I expected." Lily flexed her fingers, the gloves he'd sent hugging her knuckles. "Thank you for these." "They helped," he nodded, looking pleased. "Are you ready to play for me?" "Almost." She turned on the piano bench to face him fully. "But first, I want to renegotiate our arrangement." Winters raised an eyebrow, his expression cautious. "I'm listening. I'll play your gala," Lily said, the decision feeling right as she spoke it aloud. "But I don't want the money for myself." "I don't understand. I want you to use it to establish a scholarship. For music students who've lost parents or faced similar hardships." The idea had come to her the night before, crystallizing what she truly wanted from this experience, something that would have helped me 3 years ago. Winters studied her, his expression softening. "That's an unexpected request. I'm not playing for money anymore. I'm playing because I need to. Because after spending this week with these pieces, I've realized that walking away from music was like walking away from part of myself." She looked down at her hands, the muscles now visible beneath the skin after days of intensive practice. "But I still need to pay rent and finish school. So I have a counterproposal." "Go on." "Instead of a one-night performance, I want a job. A real one, not charity. I understand you're involved with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra Foundation. They must need instructors for outreach programs, administrative help, something. I have the background and now I have the motivation." Winters leaned back, looking genuinely surprised. "You've done your own research, I see." "I Googled you," Lily admitted. "Turns out you're not just a tech guy with a piano fixation. You're on 6 arts boards in the city." A smile tugged at his lips. "And what if I say no to your counterproposal? Then I walk away as we agreed. No hard feelings." She turned back to the piano, running her fingers lightly over the keys. "But first, let me show you what you'd be missing." Without waiting for a response, Lily launched into her program. She started with Liszt's Liebesträume, letting the romantic melody fill the room. The piece was about love and loss, fitting for the beginning of her journey. Her fingers found the notes with growing confidence, building the emotional landscape one phrase at a time. She moved directly into Chopin's ballad without pause, the transition creating a narrative that hadn't existed in the original compositions. This was the heart of her story, the turbulent middle full of darkness and uncertainty. Her body swayed with the music as the piece built toward its thunderous climax, her hands flying across the keyboard with newfound strength and precision. Finally, she attacked Rachmaninoff's prelude in G minor, the powerful chords resonating through the room. This was her declaration, her return. Each note was an affirmation, a reclamation of something she had thought lost forever. When she struck the final chord, the sound hung in the air for a moment before fading into silence. Lily sat motionless, her hands still poised above the keys, breathing hard. She felt emptied and filled simultaneously, as if the music had scoured her clean and then poured something new into the space it created. When she finally looked up, she was startled to find not just Winters in the room, but several others, the store manager, a couple of employees, and the silver-haired woman who had been at the restaurant with Winters. They stood in the doorway, drawn by the music that had escaped the practice room despite its soundproofing. No one spoke for several seconds. Then Winters cleared his throat, his usual composure slightly shaken. "I think," he said quietly, "we can work something out." 3 days later, Lily found herself in an unfamiliar part of the city, standing before the gleaming glass facade of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra administrative offices. Winters had arranged an interview with the education department, which oversaw community outreach and youth programs. The position would be part-time to accommodate her studies, with the potential to transition to full-time after graduation. Ms. Chen, a woman with kind eyes and a clipboard, appeared in the lobby. "I'm Vanessa, the education director. We're ready for you now." The interview lasted over an hour, covering her musical background, her experience working with different age groups, and her vision for making classical music accessible to new audiences. By the end, Vanessa was nodding approvingly. "One last question," she said, reviewing her notes. "You left Eastman rather abruptly. Many students face challenges during their education. What would you tell a young musician who was considering giving up?" The question caught Lily off guard. She had prepared for technical questions about pedagogy and repertoire, not something so personal. She took a deep breath. "I would tell them that music isn't just something you do, it's something you are." She recognized Winter's mother's words as they left her mouth, understanding their truth now. Taking a break isn't the same as giving up. Sometimes you need distance to find your way back to why you began in the first place. Vanessa smiled. "Well said. Now, Richard, Mr. Winters was quite insistent about your talents, but we make our own assessments here. Would you mind playing something for us? The rehearsal hall is available." Lily followed her down a corridor into a beautiful wood-paneled hall with a Steinway concert grand on a small stage. 2 other staff members were already seated, waiting. "Play whatever you'd like," Vanessa said. "Something that represents you." Lily approached the piano, running her hand along its polished surface. This instrument had likely been played by some of the greatest pianists in the world during their performances with the orchestra. She sat down and, without overthinking, began to play something she hadn't touched in years, Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, the piece she had performed at her first serious recital at age 12. It wasn't technically challenging compared to her gala repertoire, but it held emotional significance. It was the first piece that had made her mother cry when she played it. The familiar triplet pattern flowed from her fingers, the haunting melody singing above the steady pulse. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to be transported by the music, no longer afraid of where it might take her. When she finished, she looked up to find all 3 staff members watching her intently. "When can you start?" Vanessa asked simply. 2 nights later, Lily stood backstage at the grand ballroom of the Palmer House Hilton, peering through the curtains at the gathering crowd. Hundreds of Chicago's wealthiest and most influential citizens milled about in formal attire, champagne glasses glinting under crystal chandeliers. She stepped back, smoothing the midnight blue gown that had been delivered to her apartment that morning. The dress was elegant without being flashy, with a subtle shimmer that caught the light when she moved. It made her feel like a performer again, not a waitress playing dress-up. Nervous? Lily turned to find Winters approaching, immaculate in a tuxedo. Terrified, she admitted. "It's been a long time since I performed for an audience this size. You'll be magnificent." He handed her a small velvet box. "A tradition from my mother. She always wore these for performances." Inside the box was a pair of simple pearl earrings. Lily looked up, startled by the personal nature of the gift. "I couldn't possibly—" "They're not mine to keep," Winters interrupted gently. "Just a loan for tonight. For luck." Touched, Lily put them on, their weight unfamiliar against her neck. "The program has been updated," he said, handing her a printed booklet. 3rd page. Lily flipped to it and froze. There, beneath her name and brief biography, was a new addition. Tonight's performance is dedicated to the memory of David and Grace Chen, and to the establishment of the Chen Memorial Scholarship for Young Musicians, which will provide financial support to talented students who have experienced personal loss. Tears pricked at her eyes. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I did, Winters said quietly. Music creates legacies that outlive us all. Your parents' legacy deserves to be honored. A stagehand appeared, signaling 5 minutes until her performance. Winters squeezed her shoulder gently and left to take his seat in the audience. Alone again, Lily closed her eyes and did what she had done before every performance since childhood. She pictured her parents in the audience, her father's proud smile, her mother's knowing nod when she hit a difficult passage perfectly. I'm still playing for you, she whispered. I always was. When the announcement came and the spotlight hit the gleaming black piano at center stage, Lily Chen walked out with her head high, no longer afraid of the music or the memories it carried. As applause washed over her, she took her seat at the piano, adjusted the bench, and placed her hands on the keys. Then she began to play her way home. The standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes. Lily had played with such emotion and technical brilliance that she had brought the ballroom of sophisticated socialites to their feet, many with tears streaming down their faces. As she stood to take her final bow, she caught Winter's eye in the front row. He nodded once, a gesture of profound respect between artists. Backstage, Lily was overwhelmed by well-wishers, board members, wealthy donors, and music critics who had somehow heard about the waitress turned pianist and come to witness her performance. Business cards were pressed into her hands with offers of private recitals, teaching opportunities, and even recording sessions. Breathe, a familiar voice said near her ear. Winters appeared at her side, gently steering her away from the crowd to a quiet corner. You were extraordinary. Thank you, Lily said, her voice hoarse with emotion. For everything. I wouldn't be here without your persistence. He smiled at her choice of words. Some might call it meddling. I did at first. She twisted the program in her hands. I was so angry when you made me play that night at the restaurant. I felt exposed, like you'd stripped away the walls I'd built to protect myself. And now? Lily looked out at the dispersing crowd, many still discussing her performance with animated gestures. Now I understand that those walls weren't protecting me. They were imprisoning me. A photographer approached, asking for a photo of Lily with Winters for the Foundation's website. As they posed, Lily couldn't help but marvel at how drastically her life had changed in just 2 weeks. From serving drinks to Chicago's elite, to standing among them as an equal, all because one stubborn millionaire had refused to let her hide her light. After the gala, Winters offered her a ride home in his car. As they drove through the nighttime streets, Lily watched the city lights blur past the window, feeling strangely detached from the world outside, as if she existed in a dream state, not quite believing the evening had been real. What happens now? She asked quietly. That's entirely up to you, Winters replied. You start your new position with the Education Department on Monday. The scholarship fund has already received additional donations tonight, nearly $50,000 beyond my initial contribution. And based on the business cards being thrust at you, I'd say you have plenty of private opportunities to consider as well. It's overwhelming. Success often is. He glanced at her. Your parents would be proud, Lily. The mention of her parents didn't bring the usual stab of pain. Instead, she felt a gentle warmth like the pressure of her mother's hand on her shoulder during long practice sessions. I think they would, she agreed. They always said music was my gift to share, not just something for myself. I forgot that for a while. When they reached her apartment building, Winters insisted on walking her to the door, carrying the bouquets that had been presented to her after the performance. At her doorway, Lily turned to face him. Why did you really do all this? She asked. The truth. It wasn't just because of your mother or because you heard me play once. Winters considered the question, his expression thoughtful. When I was building my company, I had a mentor, an older investor who took a chance on me when everyone else saw just another college dropout with a pipe dream. He told me that true success isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by what you give back. He smiled slightly. I've made more money than I could spend in several lifetimes. But the ability to change a trajectory, to help someone find their way back to themselves, that's something money alone can't buy. He handed her the flowers. "Good night, Lily Chen. I look forward to seeing what you do next." After he left, Lily entered her small apartment, seeing it with new eyes. The cramped space that had felt like a refuge now felt like a temporary way station, a place she had been hiding rather than living. She placed the flowers in water and then went to the closet, pulling out the box of mementos again. This time, she didn't just look at her parents' photos. She placed them on the shelf above her desk where she would see them every day. No more hiding, no more running. It was time to build something new from the broken pieces of her past. 6 months later, the recital hall at the Chicago Community Music School was packed with families, many from neighborhoods where private music lessons would normally be an unaffordable luxury. On stage, a nervous 12-year-old boy adjusted his posture at the upright piano, took a deep breath, and began to play a simplified version of Fur-Elise. In the back row, Lily watched with satisfaction as the boy made it through the piece with only a few minor mistakes. When he finished and gave an awkward bow, his family erupted in cheers, pride shining on their faces. "He's improved dramatically," said Vanessa, now both Lily's boss and friend, sitting beside her. "Your technique for helping him overcome performance anxiety is working." Lily nodded. "Music should bring joy, not terror. That's something I had to relearn myself." The past 6 months had transformed Lily's life in ways she could never have imagined. Her position with the education department had expanded to include directing a new outreach program that brought music education to underserved communities. The Chen Memorial Scholarship had already helped 3 promising students continue their musical education, despite personal hardships. And Lily herself had begun performing again. Small, intimate recitals rather than grand concerts, focusing on connecting with audiences rather than simply displaying technical prowess. After the student recital, Lily helped the teachers organize the reception, chatting with proud parents and encouraging nervous children. As she was arranging a plate of cookies, she felt a tug on her sleeve. Ms. Chen, a young girl with dark braids, looked up at her. "My mom says you used to be a waitress before you became a piano teacher. Is that true?" Lily smiled, kneeling down to the girl's level. "It is true. I served food at a restaurant." The girl's eyes widened. "But you play so good. Why were you a waitress?" "Sophia." The girl's mother appeared, looking embarrassed. "I'm so sorry, that's not polite to ask." "It's okay," Lily assured her. "It's a fair question." She turned back to the girl. "Sophia, sometimes in life we have to take breaks from the things we love. I needed to step away from music for a while because I was sad. Being a waitress helped me pay my bills while I figured things out." "But you're not sad anymore?" Sophia asked. "I still get sad sometimes when I think about the people I've lost, but playing music helps me feel close to them again." Lily gestured toward the piano. "Do you play?" Sophia nodded eagerly. "Just started last month. Mom says we can't afford many lessons, but I practice on the school piano every day at lunch." Lily exchanged glances with the mother, whose expression held both pride and concern, the look of a parent wanting to give their child every opportunity but constrained by financial reality. "Sophia, would you play something for me?" Lily asked. "Just whatever you're working on right now. I'd love to hear it." The girl hesitated, then nodded and made her way to the piano. Her performance of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star was halting but earnest, her small face scrunched in concentration. When she finished, Lily applauded enthusiastically. "That was wonderful. Sophia, how would you feel about joining our Saturday morning group class? It's part of our community outreach program, so the